All righty, everyone. Welcome everyone to our June annual program. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you'd like to take a seat. So a bit of a change of pace today. We're in a different room. Thankfully, I'm Cuban, so I'm able to speak pretty loudly to you all. Otherwise, I'd be in a bit of trouble. I'd be in a bit of trouble. So of course, as always, we have a few announcements before we get started with tonight's program. Not a lot of things going on, just a couple of things. Reason being is that we are taking our annual summer break for July and August. So our regular programming here at Pinecrest Gardens, which I assume will be in the other room once we get back, they will resume in September. So we look forward to seeing you all back here then. But we do have some events coming up in July. So on Saturday, July 23rd, we will be hosting our annual July yard visit. This year, our longtime and wonderful member Mary Rose has agreed to host it at her place. I'm excited to see it. Thank you very much, Mary. So that will be happening on July 23rd. There will be more information coming up. So please keep an eye on your emails. We'll be sending a bit more of the details and logistics within the next few days to the next week. And then additionally, on Saturday, July 16th, we have we're actually partnering up with the Miami-Dade County Adopt-A-Tree. So we are doing some educational outreach at the Adopt-A-Tree events. If you're interested in getting some native trees, you can go onto the Miami-Dade County website and register to secure your 2 trees. Each person who comes can get a maximum of 2 trees to plant at their homes. They haven't announced what natives they're giving for this July 16th event, but the last one was Pigeon Plum and Mexican Alvaradoa. Very surprisingly, Mexican Alvaradoa went by really quickly. They only ordered about 100, but they were gone within the space of about an hour. So pretty popular plant. So just a way to get some more plants in your yard if you're looking to fill up some space with something a little bit larger. For the raffle table, I'd like to just thank everyone who brought in plants today. We wouldn't have a raffle table if it weren't for your generous donations. So thank you very much. I'd also like to introduce a few new members to the chapter. So I'd like to welcome Gil Amara, Manuel Lubian, Sofia de Cardenas, Mario Gangini, Priscilla Difo, Erica Gonzalez, Tova Titobaum, Paula Cristina Viala, and June Yoshimura. Is anyone that I just named in the room today? None of our new members. Either way, welcome if you are tuning in via YouTube. There's a few things that I'd like to present, some things that have been a long time coming. I wanted to present these last time, but last time, the meeting kind of was already going a bit long since we had our annual meeting. But we have a few awards that we'd like to present to some of our board members who have since exited the board. We have one award to Gita Ramsey. We have one award to Kurt Birkenoff and one award to Amy Leonard. All 3 of them had spent many years on the Dade chapter board, helping promote the mission and helping engage you folks and a lot of the other members and people from the public at large to promote native plants and their use in landscaping for their use in conservation. So these awards feature artwork by local Miami artist Kim Heiss, who, if you don't know Kim Heiss's artwork, she makes really beautiful portraits of our native plant life and wildlife as well. So a big round of applause to Gita, Kurt, and Amy. And then lastly, I would like to actually present a very special award. And the person who this award is going to is actually in the room. So if you guys attended the the FNPS annual meeting, so the statewide organization, you would have known that they give out annual awards for different categories. And one of these awards, which they call the Green Palmetto Award, is for education. And between Patty Ferries, Gwen Berzicki, and myself, we had nominated Steve Woodmansey to receive that award for this year. To just say a very quick word on Steve's contribution to education. Steve has been the Dade chapter's tireless native plant guru for over 20 years, an engaging and generous fount of knowledge about South Florida flora, fauna, and natural areas. He is widely respected for his skill as a professional biologist and a teacher, and his lifelong connection to nature. He readily shares his plant wisdom with the Dade chapter and wider community through presentations, field trips, and articles, both on his own time and professionally. His efforts give the next generation of experts a boost, educate us all, and bring new members to FNPS. For many years, he has been especially known as a lover of native lawn weeds, instructing on their identification and promoting them as important plants for butterflies and other insects, while also advocating for less mowing and lawn care. A lot more to say, but I'll just wrap it up by saying thank you very much, Steve, for being a part of the organization. It's great to have you here. And I am told that you will be receiving a plaque in the mail for this award. So with that, we are done with our announcements. Again, as always, we have several links on social media if you'd like to stay in tune and up to date with happenings in the chapter. And we also have our website, which has our calendar of events. So before we get to our main event, I'd like to take a few minutes to have the plants on the raffle table presented, and of course, Steve Woodmansey will be presenting.
Right, we have some nice additions to our raffle.
Just so the folks on YouTube can hear as well. Oh.
All right, so you guys online will have to use your imaginations on what these plants look like. But you can look them up online after you watch the wonderful program tonight. We have a nice assortment of hammock species and also some pine rockland species. Some of these are shrubs and trees. Here we have a potpourri, it looks like, of tropical sage, which is Salvia coccinea, American beautyberry, which is Cali Carpet americana, which is just Latin for American beautyberry. And there's also a little Tillandsia usneoides, which is Spanish moss on this beautyberry. So you get a little bonus bromeliad. Cali Carpet's a wonderful little shrub. It has usually purple flowers and purple berries, although there are forms that are native that have white berries. This species grows all the way up to North Carolina and is mostly on the mainland. I don't think this occurs in the Florida Keys very much, if at all. And it grows in pine rocklands and mesic flatwoods, and also in coastal strand or on the edges of maritime hammock. It's real easy to grow. It can be a little leggy, but since it's fire adapted, you can cut it back to the ground and it'll come back. I've seen mostly mockingbirds and thrashers maybe eat the fruits. I haven't seen as many migratory birds use it as much. It's in the mint family, and the leaves have been shown to deter mosquitoes. We have another native. Now, this is another shrub. This is really good for pollinators, but you need a big yard for this thing. This is called Jack in the Bush. It's Chromalena odorata. And like the beautyberry, it has leaves that are very fragrant when you crush them. But this is a real big sprawling shrub. It's native to South Florida, but it's horribly invasive in Asia and China. So the insects do adore it, but it will cover a huge area of your yard. So you'll probably want to keep it pruned. We have a row of native coffees here. We have two different types. I'll have to get a new cup for this one. This solitary one is Bahama coffee, which is Psychotria ligustrifolia. This is state endangered plant. It's only found in Florida in the United States. It's only known from Dade County in the Upper Keys. It's at about 3 or 4 sites in Dade County, and it's only on Key Largo, I think, in the Upper Keys. This species is very popular in the landscape trade. It has a real nice dense form. It gets to be about 4 or 5 feet tall, but you can keep it in the shade at around waist height or so. It'll have white flowers that attract butterflies. If you want some of the rare little butterflies, you want plants with small white flowers, things like the Atala hair streak. Visit those types of flowers, but all the other little skippers and hair streaks will also visit. This will also have red fruit that birds will devour, especially migratory birds. Similarly, we have our native shiny leaf coffee, which is Psychotria nervosa. And these are both not edible. You can't really make coffee out of them. It's in the same family as coffee. The edible coffee we consume is actually a native to Ethiopia. These two are both native in Florida. Psychotria nervosa has a much broader range. It'll grow, I think it goes almost all the way to Georgia line on the coast. I remember on a native plant study field trip, I saw some on a shell mound up near north of Jacksonville. The Bahama coffee is a darker leaf, a little bit shorter. It's a more compact plant. You can see the wild coffee is a little bit shinier. There's a third species of coffee that's native called Solsneri that has a dull leaf coffee. The shiny wild coffee also is a bit taller. It'll get like 8 feet. Both grow in the shade, so that's one of the best plants for the shade. We have some other hammock species here. We have Jamaican caper, and now that's Quadrella gemescensis. This grows in coastal hammocks. It's very salt tolerant, very salt water tolerant, not just salt wind tolerant. We have a butterfly host plant here. This is Privet senna. Used to be in the genus Cassia. It's Senna ligostrina. And this is a host to about 3 different sulfur butterflies. So the caterpillars eat the leaves. It has yellow flowers. This grows on the edges of hammocks or in light gaps of hammocks. These are kind of a sprawling, tall, narrow shrub that gets to be about 12 feet tall tops, but it often flops over when it gets that big. So this is good if you want to attract butterflies to your yard. That's the Privet senna. Other hammock species we have a really nice native shrub, small tree called Firebush. And the native ones are kind of hairy, usually only 3 leaves per whorl. There's a non-native Firebush that's sold everywhere, and there usually be 4 leaves at one node. These only have 3. The native one also gets herbivory. So the non-native one, not much eats it. So that's a telltale sign right there. This is a great plant for attracting butterflies, real pretty red flowers throughout the year, although it can get a little scrappy in the dry season. This grows in light gaps of hammocks. Thank you. And this is a fast growing shrub. So are the coffees, especially the shiny leaf coffee. So this will turn into like a 4-foot tree in one growing season. It grows really, really fast. You'd want to use mulch with this. And it attracts hummingbirds as well as butterflies. We have other hammock trees, such as this nice black ironwood. This is a very slow growing tree. This here, real crinkly leaves, as slow as a lignum vitae, maybe a little bit faster, gets a little bit taller. These are found in coastal hammocks and some inland hammocks. I've seen it in the big cypress. These have black berries that the birds will eat and little small nondescript green flowers, but it's a real attractive tree and a tree of interest. The wood is so dense, it won't float, it sinks. So the only other tree in South Florida that does that is the lignum vitae. While we're on the hammock theme, we have a native fern. This is wild Boston fern. I hope it is. And this grows, so people are asking what ground covers grow in hammocks or in shade. This is one of them. This grows with rhizomes underground, so it will spread. Does it, as far as wildlife attraction, I mean, it provides cover, but there might be a few moth larvae that eat the leaves that are, some moths are generalists, but by and large, it doesn't really attract much. It's a fern. Okay, so we do have a lignum vitae here, a very small one. So you'd want to give this to someone who's very young or who plans to live a long time. No, but seriously, this is too small. It's only about 5 inches tall for those of you listening to put in the ground just yet. But you can push it, and once you get it to be about 1.5 to 2 feet tall, you could put it in the ground successfully if you do your own yard work. If you hire someone to do your yard work, they'll probably kill it. But these things grow a lot faster once you get them in the ground. And if you plant them next to other trees, it pushes them up because it pushes that need to grow and compete. So lignum vitae is a very popular tree. I think it's the national tree of Jamaica. It also grows in the Caribbean. Very pretty blue flowers and real attractive yellow capsules that open up with seeds that are red with a red fleshy arrow that attract birds. So this is a real popular tree. It's endangered. It's only found in the Florida Keys. That is, it's only native to the Florida Keys, including the Keys in like Elliott Key, like in Biscayne National Park. We have another really good butterfly attractor. This is highly variable leaves. This is Quirky stem passion vine. And this is a host plant for 3 different butterflies, maybe 4. The zebra longwing, Julia longwing, the Gulf fritillary, and the variegated fritillary. You'll definitely get the Julia longwing and the zebra longwing and Gulf frit in your yard. Variegated fritillaries usually occur near marshes. This is a vine that'll grow somewhat in shade. Partial shade is okay. You can grow it on a fence. You can grow it as a lawn weed. It'll cover other shrubs. And the caterpillars just devour this up. So if you really want to, put in some plants that attract butterflies, it's a really good one. Also, a bonus in the pot that this vine is growing on is a rouge plant, which is another native herbaceous subshrub that also grows in shade. And that one has little pretty red berries and little either white or pinkish flowers and a spray of flowers, and they do attract butterflies as well. I'm doing on time. All right, so now I've mostly talked about the pineland stuff. I mean the hammock stuff. Now I'll talk about the pine rockland stuff. We got some nice selections. Oh, I don't want to forget over here. Here we have a Strangler Fig. I know a lot of you are probably cringing right now. You don't have room for this, but this is one of your top native trees to attract wildlife. If you ever go birding with birders, when they go to a place, they always aim for the figs because that's where all the birds are, figs and oaks. And this is the reason why is because figs fruit year round. They're actually not really fruits. The flowers are on the inside of what appears to be a fruit. And each fig species is pollinated by a different species of wasp. It's teeny, teeny, tiny, it doesn't sting. And she lays her eggs in the ovaries, some of the ovaries of the flowers where her young develop. So that life cycle happens like every 30 days. So there always has to be a fig with the ciconia, that's the name of the fruit structure, to provide a home for these wasps, because those wasps also pollinate the flowers. When the females leave the fig opens its male flowers and she gets dusted with pollen. So animals know throughout the world that figs are great places to get food and sustenance. And strangler figs are also, unlike the non-native, some of the non-native ficuses like Ficus pidgemina, which actually you don't see much anymore, these are pretty resilient in storms. So the strangler figs do pretty well in hurricanes. It's a bad hurricane, can knock over any tree. But these guys hold up pretty well. We also have another tree that's really good if you have a big property or you can plant it in your neighbor's yard. This is royal palm. So it's huge, as you know. And the fronds could even weigh 30 pounds. So you wouldn't want to like plant this next to your driveway. This is a nice native tree. All palms attract lots of pollinators like bees to their flowers. All palms are great pollinator attractors. So, all right. We have 2 little guys here. These look like, These are the salt marshmallow. That's not Hibiscus popigii, right? This is Malvaviscus. Are you saying this Kosteletskia? They're pink and they hang downward. Sounds like Kosteletskia pentacarpos. And that's in freshwater swamps. I mean, so it could be, I mean, it's sometimes when they're small, it's hard for me to identify them vegetatively. This you would need a water feature for, or you'd have to water it a lot. This grows in the dune? Well, it might be in the interdunal swale, possibly. I'd like to see flowers. I hate to hand something off to someone that I'm not sure what it is. But it does have some of the leaf characteristics that you would see with Kosteletskia. Most of this I find like in freshwater marshes and swamps. But usually, was this growing in dry ground? Ooh. Was it a low in between dunes? Curious. Oh, over here? Yeah, the Kosteletskia is a marsh plant, so you would want you'd want a water feature usually to put it in. All right, let's get to some pine rockland stuff. I got a little bit of time. Raul Moas always donates really nice stuff that he grows in his home. He has a pine rockland in his yard, and he's been donating almost every month to our events, and he's got some really rare things that are pretty cool. This is one of them. This is even though it doesn't look like much. This is Ipomea tenuissima, and this has real pretty pink flowers that are about the size of a 50-cent piece. For you kids out there, that'd be like I don't know, what's my watch face. Okay. They know watches are retrending. Right. There's also another plant which I'll talk about, which is called Clasping Aster. I'll talk about in a minute. So this is a twining morning glory, and this is it's an estate endangered plant. It's only found in Dade County in the Bahamas. Real pretty soft leaves that are peltate or even sagittate. Actually, they're arrow shaped. We also have these are the Clasping Asters I mentioned before. Now these are perennials, although I call them like perennial underground. So they kind of die back in the winter above ground, and then they return when the rainy season begins. And these will become full of these real pretty purple flowers. They're about the width of a quarter, maybe a nickel. They're in the daisy family. So these real pretty purple ray flowers, and I think the disc flowers are yellowish. We have another Symphytrichum here, which is much bigger, or Aster is the other name. They changed the name from Asters to Symphytrichum about, I don't know, 15 years ago. So this is Simmons Aster, and this gets a bit taller, and the flowers are a little bit bigger. And I find this growing in marshes, but it may persist in some pinelands that used to have sort of a marsh ecotone. I grow this in my yard without any moisture, and it does fine. So that's Simmons Aster. We have a third aster that also has a bonus native milkweed in it. This tall, lacy thing is the milkweed. This is Asclepias verticillata, or whorled milkweed. And then next to it is this little guy here. It doesn't look like much right now, but when it blooms in the fall, it'll look gorgeous again with all these purple flowers. This aster is called Silky Aster. And so far, everything I'm talking about right now grow in our pine rocklands. This one, to a lesser extent, this is a very small Bledia purpurea, which is a native terrestrial orchid called a pine pink, and it gets to be about this tall. It'll have pseudobulbs, kind of like the little onion bulbs, and it's a clumper. And the flowers are usually cleistogamous, although I think some bees visit. Cleistogamous means they don't always open and they self-pollinate. We also have some nice blue-eyed grass here. And this is actually not a grass, but an iris relative. It's the Syrinchium angustifolium. It's a clumper that has these short creeping rhizomes that'll spread a little bit. This makes a great lawn weed, especially if you have it like underneath an AC drip, because it does like it a little bit moist. But you can also put this in your pinelands. We have another neat special plant. This is a state endangered. This is wild basil, which is Ocimum campesianum. And they don't really use this culinarily. It doesn't taste quite right, at least not in this country. They don't use it much. This is fairly rare native. It's only found in a few pinelands and hammocks in Dade County and Collier County. And it may be missing from the lower Keys. I've been searching for it down there to no avail. So that's wild basil, Ocimum campesianum. And I got a minute or two left. So the two things, another pineland thing I didn't talk about is blue curls. This is one that nurseries used to carry. We don't sell it much anymore. It's in the mint family. It has real pretty blue flowers. And the reason why they call them curls is because the anthers look like eyelashes that curl underneath. And this is an herb, and it'll spread a little bit in your yard, but it's not too weedy. We also have a coastal herb or subshrub called goatweed. Capraria biflora has real pretty white flowers, and this grows in coastal uplands that are real sunny. And I think I'll stop at that and kick it back to you, Brian.
All righty. So just one quick thing before we get on to our main events for the night. Excuse my absent-mindedness, but I do want to just recognize the person who made these. Susan Walcott put a bunch of work into coordinating to order the artworks for the plaques, as well as working directly with the company to make the frame, as well as the nameplate. So I just want to take a quick moment to recognize Susan. Thank you, Susan. All right, so for our program for the night, we have Daniel Calzadilla joining us from the Miami Beach Botanical Garden. Before I turn it over to him, I'd just like to introduce him. Daniel is a Florida native with an affinity and commitment to studying native ecosystems to preserve and give back to the communities through research, outreach, and engagement. He focuses on sustainable cropping and resilience management as a solution for agroecological issues, specifically in South Florida systems. Besides being a certified beekeeper and a gardener, he is a poet and rare fruit enthusiast. Daniel graduated from FIU in 2018 with a bachelor's degree in environmental studies and sustainability and a certificate in agroecology. He interned at the USDA ARS Subtropical Horticultural Research Station in Coral Gables, and now works for UF-IFAS at the Tropical Research and Education Center in Homestead as a biological scientist. In 2021, he also started a graduate program in agronomy at UF, focusing on agroecology. All right, so I'd like to turn it over to him, and this audio should. So Daniel, whenever you're ready.
Hey everyone, good evening. Let's see, can you see my screen? Oh, I can't hear you now, Brian, but.
1 second, the audio was working before. This is supposed to have a pin. 1 second, Daniel.
Yeah, sure.
Susan, do we have the person from Pinecrest Gardens here to put in the pin? Did they just leave? One second, sorry about that.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, they were, but I think they need to input the pin to connect it again. Try that, Daniel.
Hey everyone, good evening.
There we go.
All right. Well, what an introduction. And thank you, Brian. I also just want to say a special thanks to Steve Woodmansee for putting me up on this. I really appreciate it, and I'm really excited to be here. I just got a little head cold, and just by chance, good timing. So thankfully, we could Gene's flexibility, we shifted to Zoom. I'm sad not to be there in person. I really like Pinecrest Gardens a lot. So yeah, you heard a little bit of introduction about myself. My name's Daniel Castilla. I am a community advisor for the South Florida Beekeeping Association at FIU. And I'm also the owner and founder of Bee Wranglers, a rescue swarm rescue and relocation service for beehives. And so today we'll be talking about beekeeping, an introduction to beekeeping and pollinators, although you guys are pretty versed on all the pollinator plants. So, you know, hopefully I can say some things that maybe you don't know. So I got started doing rescues in 2019, and I launched this business, and it's been going really well, actually. My kind of, I guess, home base is at the Miami Beach Botanical Garden, and I work alongside Ricky, which has been really great for the past couple of years, and we've just been growing. And so this is kind of what a typical rescue looks like. You get some beautiful, nice local honey, and you know, Hollywood's kind of given a bad rap to bees. They are not, you know, dangerous as long as you kind of respect them and approach them with some caution. But other than that, I've never really experienced too much of the Squaletta or the Africanized genetics. And so I'd like you guys to meet the Hive. These are all of the past and present members of the association. And you can see Ricky there. She was a past president. I'm still serving as the community advisor. And the Hive has just been kind of growing since its inception, I believe in 2016. So that's been a lot of fun working with them. And so today I'll be talking to you, about beekeeping and pollinators, how to help pollinators, an introduction to honeybees, of course, the glory of sweet honey, how to get certified as a beekeeper, the rules and regulations, and then kind of what personal protective equipment and what kind of hives you can be thinking about if you want to set up some in your backyard. So how to help pollinators. Steve listed off a whole bunch of plants, and that's pretty much where I like to always start. You know, where do pollinators live? They live right outside your door. You know, our gardens don't end at our fences. Last week was just National Pollinator Week, so a lot of awareness was brought to pollinators in general, and that's kind of my mission alongside the FIU Beekeeping Association, that we try to advocate for all pollinators. Beekeeping is giving me this platform to talk about all pollinators, so that's bats, butterflies, birds, and all the other native bees that people don't think about when you say save the bees, right? Everyone thinks kind of the honeybees, but it's actually all the other pollinators. So by building habitat, planting a bunch of different natives, flowers and trees, you can go annual or perennial. If you want to do the non-native ornamentals, that's kind of fine, as long as they're not invasive. And obviously I would stress on the being a nectar or pollen source. Obviously I always try to advocate for fruit trees and edible spaces in combination with your natives and your pollinator friendly plants. If you don't have a garden, don't worry about it. You can try to advocate, or you know, if you see an HOA, if you live in an HOA and you see them putting in some new landscaping, try to find out if they're going to be replanting with natives. Maybe you can get them to sign up for the Florida friendly landscape program. You know, you can kind of talk your friends into planting stuff if they're redoing their yard. If you find an empty lot, you can do some guerrilla gardening. and do some native seed bombs in there. That's a lot of fun. And so, our bees important, our pollinators important. We've all heard that that pollinators are responsible for 1 in every 3 bites of food, and that's kind of the message that I'd like to drive home here. That a world without pollinators would be a pretty sad world. Not only would we not have a lot of our native plants and kind of a lot of plants reproducing, but we would have a lot less food to eat. And so advocating for these insects and animals is really critical. So what are the challenges that pollinators face? They face a lot of a wide variety of threats: loss of habitat, a lack of diverse forage. A lot of farmers are planting monocultures with no buffers or plants on the edges of their fields. There's a lack of nesting sites, and unfortunately, honeybees are not protected. And they can be easily exterminated. There's a lot of issues with queen quality and genetic diversity in honeybees as well. And of course, we definitely know about the synthetic chemicals, the herbicides, the pesticides being over applied. So if there's any way that you can kind of step back from that in your own yard, or kind of see maybe if your office building, landscaping, or even your HOA, you can talk to them about alternative ways, and natives are a great way to do that because they require less of these chemicals and less fertilizers. They're more resilient and adapted to these conditions. So this was the Saving America's Pollinators Act was in 2019, and it was just revisited in 2021. And if you haven't heard about it, it's the House Rule. Well, the 2019 was 1337, and then last year it was 4079. And so it takes action related to pesticides that may affect pollinators, and it also helps people have better access to healthy foods that aren't contaminated with pesticides and other synthetic residues. And more importantly, its goal was to protect the web of life that are affected by these chemicals. So let's talk about bees. And so globally, there are over 16,000 species of bees, and a lot of people only think about honeybees, right? But there's 7 families, and out of the 16,000, there's about 6,000 in Apidae, and then again, out of that 16,000, there's about 4,000 that are native to North America, and about 300 that are native to Florida. There's only about 7 to 12 honeybee species, and probably the 3 most common that you'll see first and foremost is the Italian, or the Apis mellifera ligustica, and that's your European honeybee. And then the other 2 you'll see kind of more up north. Oh, sorry, I got that switched. The ligustica is found a lot in North America, but it's actually the last one. Sorry, it's Apis mellifera. But yeah, the carniolan is kind of stronger, more adapted to winters. So you'll see that variety, that species, more in kind of New England and kind of some of the northern states. And actually, this bee on the bottom left is a really nice native bee, and I really like it. All those iridescent bees are just beautiful. So the Western or European honeybee, Apis mellifera. So a lot of people, I always like to ask this question: is it honeybee or is it honeybee? And that's a lot of confusion there when some people write it, because the honeybee is a type of bee that makes honey. So that's why they're actually two separate words. And so its origin is in East Africa, and it's spread throughout Eurasia. And this painting right here on the bottom left comes from the spider caves, or the Cuevas de Arañas. And that's in Valencia, Spain. And it's called The Man of Biscorp. And it's thought that this painting is over 8,000 years old. So humanity's relationship with honeybees is over 7,000 years old. A little bit about the actual colonies. A typical colony can have anywhere from 10 to 70,000 bees, depending on the size and how they're managed. They are eusocial insects, which means that they work together as a collective, as a single organism. The hives are perennial, and there's only one queen, and that's the other meaning of the eusocial. And so, very interestingly, some people don't know that 90% of the hive is actually female, and that's the bee that you see on the top left. That's the bee that you'll see pretty much most everywhere. That's the bee that pollinates. It's the worker bee, and she's female. She collects the pollen, the nectar, the water, the sap to make propolis, and she also cleans the hive and pretty much does everything. The drones, or the male bees, they kind of just hang out, and they can't feed themselves, they can't forage, they just fly out and go and try to mate with other queens. So the foraging area of a bee is typically 2 to 6 mile radius. It really depends. And just putting that fact again, they help pollinate 1/3 of our agricultural crops. So these are the 3 castes of the bees that you'll find in the hive. We already talked about the worker. On the left, that's the female. I mean, she's female. You have the drone in the center, which is male, and then the queen bee, which is the largest, is on the right. So let's talk about honey. So there's a lot of concerns about fake honey and it being mixed with corn syrup, or just watered down with sugar syrup, like simple syrup. And so that's kind of why I would stress to anyone who wants to eat quality honey to try to find a local beekeeper and support them. Of course, there's been all kinds of studies why honey is great to eat, its antibacterial properties, and I'm having some now with my tea to hopefully fight this cold. And there is that, I put that asterisk there because of other things that you want to think about, that you don't want to feed honey to a child less than 1 year old. You can get, it's called bautism. And so that's some things to consider about honey. A hive generally will start, a managed hive will generally start producing honey in about a year or 2, depending on its strength and its built out resources, and also the local nectar flows. So that's something that you'll want to keep in mind as a beekeeper. And generally, the honey that you'll get from beekeepers is called, it's considered wildflower because they are multifloral sourced. And so the beekeeper can't really guarantee that it's, the nectar is from one plant or another. It's just from whatever's around their area. If a hive is doing really well, you can get upwards of 40 to 60 pounds. It really depends, again, on kind of your management style and your goals as a beekeeper. Some fun facts that some people might not know is that honeybees have to visit roughly 2 million flowers for a pound of honey. And that roughly equates to about 1/12 of a teaspoon that a bee makes in her lifetime. and the worker bees work themselves to death just to make that one little 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey. So you can kind of have a little bit more of an appreciation for what it takes to make honey. Some other products that bees make that could make beekeeping a little bit more lucrative. Propolis is seen as an incredible, also antimicrobial and health benefits for colds. I took some today as well in a tincture form like that. Propolis comes from from saps from plants that the bees collect, and they mix it with a little bit of wax, and that's how they use to seal up cracks and crevices in the hive. They don't like any drafts, and they don't like any moving parts in the hive too. So opening up and moving different frames and parts in the hive can get tricky because of this sticky substance. It really is like glue. They also line the inside of the cell after every bee is born to sterilize it. And the queen bee, before laying an egg, she will inspect the cell to make sure that it is clean and ready to receive the egg. Of course, we all know that bees, honeybees produce wax, and there's just so much you can do with wax. I actually make a salve, a hand lotion, and just getting into candles right now. But you can make wood polishes and just all kinds of things. If you haven't tried pollen, it's also another great kind of health benefit. I take it almost every day. I really enjoy it. It tastes really nice. And you can kind of eat it with everything in shakes, on toast, granola, etc. Maybe something that you haven't heard too much about, or you have, the royal jelly. It's the substance that is fed only to the queen bees, and that's how queen bees become queens. They are fed a strict diet of only royal jelly. And that sounds kind of nice, very pampered. And then something, maybe you really haven't heard too much about this, is the venom, apitherapy. So receiving stings. And, I believe it's still anecdotal evidence, but there's been a lot of research for Lyme disease. I've also heard for muscle spasms, just muscle aches, MS, multiple sclerosis, and kind of even just like anxiety and other ailments. People will take some stings. Yes, the bees do die every time they sting, but when you think about a queen bee, when she's up and really running, she can lay upwards of 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day. And so the regeneration time of the bees is very quick. Bees will only live about 6 weeks to a couple months, depending on the time of year. And so you don't have to feel too bad about a few bees dying, especially if they're being used for helping relieve some pains. Of course, you can get into beekeeping and produce queens. You can raise queens and become queen breeders. Very important and very lucrative. A queen bee right now is going for about $40. And so there's another revenue source. And then of course the bees, you can actually just sell a hive or a package of bees, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So a sweet partnership. We the South Florida Beekeeping Association and myself, the representative of Bee Wranglers, we started an apiary at the Miami Beach Botanical Garden in 2019 after a rescue that we did. And as I told you before, that the association really puts an emphasis on education and advocacy. And that's kind of why I'm here giving this presentation about supporting all pollinators and habitat. We now have 5 hives and we've reached capacity. And they're all producing, pretty much they're all producing honey. in different times, but they've all had produced honey. And we host a bunch of different workshops, pretty much just like this one, an introduction to beekeeping, how to do honey harvesting, and very recently we finished a certification program focusing on the South Florida environment, because there's a lot of different programs out there, but we were looking for one that tailored specifically for South Florida. And so that brings us to certification. Certification as a beekeeper it's highly recommended, but it's not mandatory. It's what's called or considered community certification. Usually it's about a 2-month program and training. Most of them have a series of lectures and some written homework. Then there's a written and practical exam. And by the end of it, you should be feeling comfortable on how to manage a colony. And then at the very end, I highly recommend you to try to find a mentor and join any of these associations. There's a state beekeeping association. The South Florida and Caribbean Bee College is hosted by UF. And then there's obviously the our association, the FIU Beekeeping Association. And so the nitty gritty, I guess, beekeeping is kind of just like fishing, or at least that's the best analogy that I found. No one's going to teach you how to fish, right? But you still need a license. So that's why I said certification isn't mandatory, but it's highly recommended. You know, you'd want to know what kind of bait to use and what kind of line and all that. So you do need to get registered with the state, and you definitely want to check with your city or your HOA if you can even have beehives, if you want to consider going that route. But the nice thing about being registered as a beekeeper with the state is it's pretty cheap. It's about $10 a year for 1 to 5 hives. You get a firm number and you have to put them on all your boxes. It'll give you access to special medications to keep your bees healthy. And I've seen mixed results, but generally they will inform you. This was more about when Zika was more prevalent. They were doing a bunch of aerial sprays, and they'd give you usually about 24 to 48 hour notice, which isn't a lot of time, but they at least they gave you a heads up. And so, right, do you want to? This is kind of the turning point, right? We talked about certification. We talked about the registration, and so this is kind of where you can decide: do you want to become a beekeeper, or do you just want to have do you want to have bee having, right? Do you just want to have bees in your yard, or do you want a more active relationship? Bees are considered livestock, so you have to do monthly or weekly inspections. You're going to be feeding them at certain times of the year, doing treatments, giving them different medications as needed. You're going to be managing them, and the rules and regulations, you have to be compliant with the state. If that seems like a little overwhelming, you can do a passive relationship. You can rent hives from a beekeeper. Why would you want to rent hives? You just want to observe bees. You just want to have them in your yard. Maybe you're a gardener and you want the pollination services, or you just want your own local honey, because if you have a hive in your backyard, beekeepers will usually share a portion or all of that honey with you because you're giving them the space to have their hives there. And usually there's some relationship there. So that's a decision to make, and based on that decision, we'll go right into the PPE and the type of hives that you can get into. So at the bare minimum, you want a jacket, which is what the gentleman on the bottom left is wearing, and it includes the veil. Or if you look up on the top left, that's me. I'm just wearing a veil and some gloves. Then you're going to want a hive tool, a smoker, a bee brush, and a frame perch. And then it's kind of recommended to have all of these things in a toolbox. There's really nice toolboxes that even have a place to hold frames. And that's if you're running these frames, which are the Langstroths. So that's the traditional beehive, the founder of beekeeping, Lorenzo Langstroth. And they come in 10 or 8 frame hives. The standard hive is about 7 pieces. It comes with an outer cover, an inner cover, a high body frames, a bottom board, an entrance reducer, a hive stand, and then an optional kind of extra is something called a slatted rack for extra ventilation. And I'll kind of go over this. I have a visual of it coming up, but I just wanted to introduce it just so you can kind of get a sense of it. And then there's a bunch of other type of hives. So there's top bar hives. I'm sure some of you have heard of the flow hives. And then there's something called a comfort hive, and that was started by Sam Comfort, I believe down here in Homestead. And it's a really interesting beehive approach because he wanted to get away from Langstroths. He wanted to make his own hives. So what I like about, what I just want to say about that is that there's kind of, I'm going to be careful, but there's no wrong way to beekeep, so to say. It's kind of like gardening where you can kind of plant things, you know, in certain places. Obviously, if something needs full sun, beehives need full sun. You know, it's going to not do as well in partial shade, or might even fail. So that's something to consider. But I've had a lot of hives, even in some partial shade, that they're doing well. They're actually producing honey and they're healthy. So, but it's kind of my favorite thing about beekeeping, that you can kind of approach it in many different ways. So these are the kind of the standard 2 hives that you would see. On the left-hand side, it's that classic kind of beehive box. These look to be like 10 frames, and that's a breakdown of all that equipment that I told you that you're going to want to look into. And then on the right-hand side is a top bar hive, and I consider top bar hives kind of level 2 beekeeping, so to say, because I'll just go into it right now. The frames. So these are what the frames look like. On the right-hand side is a top bar hive, and you can see that there is only kind of what the name says there's only 1 bar on the top that the bees build their comb on. And so the comb is very fragile, as new wax is very fragile. And so you have to be very careful when you're kind of manipulating the frames and inspecting them, because if one false move and the whole kind of frame can swing out and fall. And then besides the mess, you may have some angry bees and all of that. But on the left-hand side, that's a more traditional frame, Langstroth frame, and it has all 4 walls. This one right here is just using some fishing line, it looks like, across the middle of the frame to give the bees some guidance on how to build a straight comb. And it'll also act as some reinforcement so that the frame isn't so fragile when you go to move it. As the comb gets older and the bees use it, the comb does get a lot stronger and more rigid, and you can worry a little bit less about it breaking as you manipulate it. But these are some other things to consider. The comfort hives are actually all top bar, and so that's just something fun right there. And then pretty much lastly, how do you actually get bees? Well, there's 2 ways to get bees. Well, maybe 3, but this is if you wanted to buy good genetics from somewhere. You would buy a package of bees, which is usually about 3 pounds of adult bees, worker bees, with some drones in there, and then 1 queen. What's nice about that is that you know, it's pretty easy to install those. The only downside is that the bees have to start from scratch. So the hive does not come with any comb, with any baby bees, brood, any resources stockpiled. And so if you wanted to kind of go that route, you would buy a 5-frame nucleus colony, or a nuke, an NUC, from a beekeeper. And they'll usually run, a package will run about, honestly, I'm not 100% sure. I have to double check, about $100 or so. A nuke will roughly run 175, around there, maybe $200. It kind of depends where it's coming from, and if you're picking up and all of that. But what's nice about a nuke is that it's practically a small hive. So you already am starting with a lot of bees, frames that are built out, comb, a good laying queen, and the transition from that small box into your new hive, it's a lot less on the bees, right? Just like transplant shock, you know, whatever you can do to mitigate that is just a lot better for the bees. So then the last way is obviously catching a swarm. That's another great way. The only thing about that is that when you catch any, or if you do a removal, by Florida law, we have to replace the queens. And so you're looking at about $40 right there. And, you know, just making sure that you catch the old queen and remove her and introduce a new queen. And there's a lot of kind of some fun there that we can go into. But yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Kind of want to open up for questions and just want to say thank you for behaving. I'll take any questions. And if you want to stay connected with me, you can follow some of our social media accounts. That second one is my lotion company. The third one is my personal, and then the last one is the South Florida Beekeeping Association's tag. Then I had a little fun activity. I don't know if there's time, but you can take a picture of it. I mentioned, or Brian mentioned, I was a poet, and so this is kind of something fun that I like to do. You can approach this, you know, any way you like. There's so many different poem styles. My personal favorite's a haiku, and I've written definitely a few about bees and pollinators. So yeah, with that, that's about all I had. I had a whole bunch of lists of native plants, but I think you guys probably know them all. I can run through them if you want, but yeah, that's what I have for you guys.
Daniel, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So just the way that we have the audio set up here, I think it's being picked up by my laptop and not our microphone. So so I'll just relay questions we have in the audience, since we're in a bit of a big room, and I don't know if my computer will capture their questions. So does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I have maybe a 60-foot ficus tree with a huge beehive in it, and I wonder how long do beehives live in the wild? How long will that hive live there? Did you hear that, Daniel? Or
okay, something about a beehive in a tree and how do they live in the wild?
yeah. So the question is how long would a beehive last in the wild typically?
It really depends. It could be years, honestly. A queen bee can live anywhere from 3 to 7 years. It really is variable. If you see a hive in a tree, it's possible that that hive has already swarmed maybe once, maybe twice, but it's still kind of the same hive, so to say, progressing. But it's kind of hard to say if disease or the mites or just the nature of the tree cavity being too humid or something like that, you know, bothering the bees, they could go on kind of indefinitely.
Okay. Yeah.
Is a flow hive safer or more comfortable for bees? And does it affect the honey flow?
All right. So the question is if a flow hive is more effective and safer for the bees, and does it affect the honey quality?
Flow hives are a touchy subject, I think. It's kind of subjective. They use a lot of plastic. Excuse me, and I'm trying to get away from plastic. But in terms of safer, I'm not really sure. Every time I extract honey, I mean, I'm very gentle in general, but I'm definitely very gentle when I'm extracting honey, and I only ever take 80%. I always leave 20% of the honey on the hive. They don't really need it down here in South Florida. We don't really have winters, but I still like to leave it for them. And it kind of encourages them to continue making honey in that box. Just a lot of plastic in the flow hives. And I guess maybe I'm just more old school and I kind of like the Langstroth hives, or I eventually want to move to top bar to kind of get away from any plastic really in hives. I don't know if hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. So you spoke briefly about sort of local, municipal, state regulations and registering with the state. So I've spoken to a few beekeepers and a few other people, and they've actually said that as a resident, you cannot be prevented from having a bee hive because technically there are rules governed by the state of Florida that say that agriculturally, anyone, anywhere in any municipality is permitted to have a beehive. So I wasn't sure if you knew about that, or you could speak about legalities of having one in your backyard at any time for anyone.
That's good information. I wasn't sure. I just know that you do have to register your hives with the state. It is they are considered livestock, so you get some protections by registering. But yeah, as far as anyone anywhere, that's interesting. That's really great to know. Even with I mean, yeah, I always put that kind of note there, just checking with the city and the HOA just in case. But yeah, if there's some language there that says it doesn't matter if you're in an HOA or anything like that, that's great. If you want to keep bees, yeah, by all means.
Like an obstacle or something close to the hive that's at least 6 feet, because apparently the behavior of the bees is that they go straight up rather than like across pedestrian areas or things like that, as long as you have some kind of barrier or protection that's 6 feet or more. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. So that's called the flyaway barrier. And that's exactly it's what it is. Usually, I should have put that in there. You don't want the hive more than or less than 10 to 15 feet away from the property line. Ideally, it'd be in the backyard, kind of just away from the public. And yeah, you kind of want roughly a 6 foot fence as a flyaway barrier, either an actual fence or just some shrubs. Yeah.
So we have one question from YouTube.
Okay.
They would like to know if there are any restrictions on yard size to keep bees, and I'm guessing that means minimum yard size. Or...
I mean, you can possibly get away with a hive on a balcony. Again, just if your neighbors and maybe your association allows it. But really, you'd want about 3 feet, a 3 by 3, a 1 meter by 1 meter space. Obviously, a little bit more is just nicer to have like space to walk around and work the hive. But yeah, about a 1 meter by 1 meter space to have the hive in the center, so you can work it from different angles as needed. That would be about your size limitation. Definitely consider where you're located, and if your yard is that small, you want to make sure that there's a lot of forage around the area within, remember that 3 to kind of 5 mile radius from your home or wherever the hive is located.
And then one more question from YouTube before we bring it back to our in-person audience. Do you think native bees could ever take the place of honeybees in pollinating crops if there ever was a disastrous decline in honeybees?
That's a really good question. I as optimistic as I am about that, I don't think so. Just because of the way that we've come to rely on honeybees so much, and the fact that they're oh gosh, what is the word I'm looking for? They are it's not opportunistic, maybe it is opportunistic, or their foraging preferences are much wider than a lot of native pollinators. And again, not to say that native pollinators can't hold up against the honeybees, but we kind of really rely on them. If there was ever a time or a world where, you know, every median, every swale, every public park, I mean, everywhere where there's green space possible, that we had just planted out with natives and just plants that could support pollinators. Who knows? Maybe the native pollinator pool would be that large that they could, you know, they could help make a dent in some of the pollination that honeybees provide. But I'm not sure. I don't think so. As optimistic as I'd like to be.
Any more questions from the audience? Yeah.
I was told one time at a talk about bees that if your neighbors spray their yard with insecticides and things, that you really shouldn't have a beehive in your yard.
Okay, so Daniel, did you hear it? Or?
Yeah, I heard the question. It's I mean, if you can, if you really wanted to keep bees and you knew your neighbor sprayed, try to put it as far away from their yard as possible. That's one. Two, that opens up a great kind of conversation to have if they're willing to have it. And, you know, not to be funny about it, but any honey that you produce could kind of sweeten the deal and maybe entice them to spray less. And that's just a moment of kind of education, possibly like, why are you spraying? And is there anything that we can, you know, talk about to kind of lessen your sprays? Because I am keeping bees, and also just am concerned about the health of all pollinators.
Yeah.
So we put up bird boxes for our street owls and our wood house, but the bees moved in it. So we're up to 7 boxes, and the bees swarm and take over another box. One of them was really close to the house, and started moving in and spraying the hose. Is there anything we can put in the other spots so we keep a few for the birds? Is there anything that we can put in the box to discourage our bees from moving in?
So not sure if you heard that one because we have a bit of background noise.
Yeah.
So basically, someone here from the audience has owl boxes, and they have an issue with honeybees moving into the owl boxes, and they're wondering if there's anything that they can or bat boxes.
Wow.
If there's anything they can do to prevent that from happening.
Bat boxes I haven't heard of yet. It seemed like they're a little small for a colony. Owl boxes and other bird boxes, yeah, absolutely. I've done my fair share of rescues and relocations out of those. Actually, Ricky has helped me twice at the Miami Beach Botanical Garden. I don't exactly have a straightforward answer. I'm not 100% sure how to prevent them. Bees, it's a great book if you want to read it. It's called Honeybee Democracy by Thomas Seeley. Bees kind of swarm, and that's reproduction at the colony level. They swarm wherever they want. An owl box is a pretty suitable space. Usually they're large enough, you know, give or take, and they're dry, and you know they're usually high up. And I guess what the answer that I kind of have is I actually have a friend who's starting to work with Miami-Dade County and a bunch of arborists to try to start a snag program. And so if you don't know what a snag is, that's a dead tree that usually has been hollowed out for bird nests. So leaving these trees in the landscape provides more habitat and more nesting areas for birds. I know that doesn't exactly solve the bees moving into owl boxes, but you know, I guess the other option is to possibly, if you're having that issue, maybe also install a swarm trap on your property, and work with a beekeeper to pick those up, or to install two boxes, two owl boxes, and leave one for the bees. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah.
I think we have time for one or two more questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I had some bees in my yard. Beekeeper, contacted a beekeeper and had a couple of beehives in my yard, and I stayed there for a while, and I found my backyard, if I made noise or I dug a hole like a shovel, I dug a hole in the ground, the bees would sting. And something that was typical for bees, they would get aggressive in their area. Talking to some other people who said that's not actually typical. Maybe those bees were aggressive. I think that general hives are aggressive. I kept in my yard, tried it again. Typically that aggressive, or
Did you catch that?
I kind of got the general sense of it. Something about aggressive bees in a yard.
Yeah. So someone in the audience has kept before, and they noticed that if they did anything like digging holes in the ground, that the bees would become aggressive. And he's heard from other folks that that's not typically the case, and he's just wondering in general if bees and hives can be aggressive like that under certain circumstances.
I guess I would say that's kind of the caveat. Yeah, under certain circumstances, bees would be a little bit more defensive, and I don't really like to say aggressive, right? Because they're defending their home. And that's kind of like the shift that I like to make when people think about like the Apis mellifera sculetta, or the Africanized bee. I've seen some pretty defensive hives, but I think that was more of the time of day that I was trying to relocate them, because I went back the next day and they were a lot more timid. I was kind of doing this later in the evening. Definitely the time of day, and I tell people this all the time. A hive can sense your own fear and your own kind of subconscious thoughts. And so as you're going to work them, I know this is more of a hive like in your yard, but if you're passing by them and yeah, maybe you're digging and disturbing them, or kind of working around them, they could be bothered. But also the bees themselves, the hive can be having a bad day too, just like we are, and they're just letting you know, like, please stay away, like we're having a bad day. So it's kind of both. If a hive is kind of being a nuisance, you should try to relocate them. Worst case scenario, you are legally allowed to kill them. So that's not, that's kind of the last option. But if you want to just keep that wild hive, which I kind of don't recommend either, you can try to smoke them a little bit if you want to work in that area. And what the smoke does, the reason beekeepers use smoke is because honeybees communicate with pheromones, and the smoke interrupts that signaling pathway. So it's like camouflage for us. I don't know if that long-winded answer.
Any last question? All right, Daniel, again, I'd like to thank you for joining us on for the great presentation you gave, and I'm going to highly encourage the audience, if anyone does the bee poem, send it along. I'm sure you'd like to see it. And I think we have your email, so
definitely, yeah, that'd be really nice. Yeah, keep in touch. I'd love to do another one and hopefully kind of see some of you guys in person. I thank you again for the opportunity, and I hope
we have one more,
oh.
Daniel. Sorry, one more question.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Riki's asking if you have a poem with you that you could read about bees.
Okay, hold on. Give me a second. Hold on. Let me see if I could find one really quick. Oh geez. I have to search through my Okay, so this one is a kind of a play on words. It's written in Spanish, and then I'll translate it to English. But I'll preface before that wax, beeswax in Spanish is cera, and so the poem goes: Será cierto, cera de abeja, cera por vida, cera de vela, cera los años, cera por amor. And so there's kind of a play on words there if you understand Spanish, but in English it translates to certainly or surely this is oh gosh, you know, hold on, I'm gonna actually translate it. I'm stumbling here. Let's see what it actually translates to. Yeah, certainly beeswax. Beeswax of bees. The beeswax of life. The wax of a candle. And then the wax of the years, and then the wax for love. So it kind of doesn't translate as well in English, but yeah, I can send that along, or I'll put it in the chat if you want to read it in Spanish.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Yeah. Thanks guys and everyone, and I hope you have a great night.
Thank you. You as well. Have a good one. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Yeah, take care.